Hi everyone, this is Callie. Thanks so much for being here today. I am sharing a fun card using products from the December 2024 card kit. As always, there are a lot of fun products inside a monthly card kit, so I'm going to share ways to think outside the box and use it all together this time so that we can create a fun card that you wouldn't necessarily visualize from seeing these products. So we have the Snowflakes adhesive transfers. I'm going to show you how to use that. And then we have this fun set from Kathy Zilski called Warmest Wishes, and then an embossing folder with cutting dies that coordinate called Bundled Up. And we're going to be using the little mittens here on the dies. Now that you've seen the main components from the card kit that I'm going to be using, let's get started here with the adhesive transfer sheets. So at first glance, this looks like a toner foil acetate sheet that you could just run through a laminator style machine to foil these images. Well, actually, these are going to transfer adhesive to your cardstock so that you can add foil that way or other mediums. So what I'm going to be doing is I don't want any excess overhanging off of my cardstock because that adhesive is going to transfer onto your carrier sheet. So I am cutting these down and using only a few of the snowflakes, and the ones that I don't use I can save for another project. With my scissors, I'm just going to cut around the snowflakes, getting as close as I can without getting too close to the image so that I can position these without overlapping the acetate. Once I'm happy with where they're positioned and know where I'm going to roughly place them, I'm going to peel away the backing, and that's going to reveal adhesive on that back side. So you can kind of see they kind of stick together there. So I position it on my cardstock where I want this snowflake to be, and then I'm going to press it down a little bit. It's going to burnish that adhesive before we foil it into place. Not foil, I should say heat transfer that adhesive into place. So I've removed all of the backing. Now I'm going to place it into my carrier sheet and run it through my Gina K fuse machine. You can use a mink machine or a laminator. Just make sure it's nice and hot and ready to go. So after I run it through the machine, I'll set the machine aside. I no longer need it unless you want to use foil. I'm not using foil today. I want to share a way that you can use this product without having to laminate it again for foiling purposes. So I'm peeling away these snowflake acetates, and as you can see, that adhesive image has been transferred to my cardstock. There are a few ways to use this adhesive transfer. You can foil it with heat again, or you could foil it with pressure using your die cutting machine, or you can add glitter. And this time I'm going to be using some sparkling silver embossing powder that's also included in the December 2024 card kit. I'm going to add the embossing powder the same way I would if I were to use a clear embossing or watermark ink, but I decided to also pour it over it again and kind of rub it into place because I really want that adhesive to attract as much powder as possible. And then I'll heat set this like I would a normally embossed cardstock. So I'll heat set that, and you can see that shimmer and silver embossing powder has been embossed in place. I'm going to set that panel aside now and stamp some loose images from the Warmest Wishes stamp set. I wanted to create a canopy of foliage at the top of my card, so I'm using these leaves here and just stamping them onto another sheet of paper so that I can fussy cut them because I don't have the coordinating dies. If you have the dies, that would make it a lot easier. And I'm using different shades of green. This artichoke cube color is a part of the card kit as well. So I'm showing you how I can add dimension to these foliage using a sponge applicator with the darker tone. I just sponge on some darker color at the tops and edges of my foliage, and then I restamp so that I can get this two-tone shaded effect for the foliage. I stamped 2 sets of leaves, and now I'm going to stamp some berries. I'm going to use some cranberry ink for a deep red color on these berries, and they're little, so I'm not too worried about any shading, so I'm just going to stamp them with this one color and not worry about using a second color. Then moving back to my snowflake panel, I also want to stamp additional leaves on this as well. And because I want the leaves to overhang a little bit for the canopy, I'm using a larger MISTI with my craft tacky mat so that I can position my paper in the center of the MISTI and stamp off the panel a little bit without having to reposition my paper constantly, without that craft tacky mat holding my paper in place. So the craft tacky mat is great for stamping off-edge images like this in a stamp positioner. These foliage images are going to be sitting behind the ones that I'm planning on fussy cutting. So I am using a darker combination of colors, and I'm using the artichoke this time as a base and using a darker kale color to sponge on that second color for shading. And I'll repeat this process a second time with a second set of leaves so that I can fill my canopy all the way across that panel. Then going back to the previous panel that I stamped, I'm going to fussy cut all of these little berries and these leaves. I know it's a bit much, but it's really going to bring my vision for this card to reality. So I am fussy cutting all of these little leaves and berries, and then I'll use some 3D foam squares to attach them to the top of my canopy over those darker leaves that I stamped so that I can create lots of dimension and make it really, really full up there. Once the leaves are in place, I'm going to use liquid adhesive and adhere these little berries all over the place, tucking them underneath some of the leaves that are propped up as well. And that gives lots of dimension and interest to the card as well. I really love the way the berries add to the top of this canopy, making it super festive and giving it that holiday feel. So now that that panel is done, we're going to work on our mittens now, and I've got a rainbow of colors up here that I'm going to be ink blending this little panel with. And what we'll do with that panel is die cut a bunch of colorful mittens from this bundled up die set that I'm only using the mittens from, and then we'll emboss it using the embossing folder. If you don't want to ink blend a panel like I am here, you can use colored cardstock. You can also use patterned paper. And a part of the card kit is also a pack of color blend cardstocks that would also be fun for this card. I really wanted the transition of the ink to be very close together, so because these mittens are so small. So I really wanted each mitten to have a two-tone effect. So this was the easiest way for me to achieve that look. So it does look splotchy, but don't worry about it, because as you choose the spots for your mittens, you can position your mittens so that you can grab the colors that you want. So I am going to die cut all the way across this panel, and I do have an extra mitten here or there. It's always great to have extra so that you don't have to go back and die cut more. And then after I die cut all of these little mittens, you can emboss them with the fun patterns from this embossing folder. I'm using the negative side of the embossing folder, if that makes sense, because I can kind of inlay these little mittens into place and it kind of just snaps perfectly into position. Then I'll run it through my die cutting machine to get these fun embossed patterns onto these mittens. And I wasn't worried about the mittens pairing up. I just really wanted that rainbow to go across, so I die cut as much as I thought I would need, including any extras or changing colors around. Then again, I'll use some thin 3D foam squares to attach these mittens going across the panel. And to make it look like strings, I'm just using a black art liner pen and using my T-ruler to make sure my lines are straight. And I'm drawing a line from the mitten to the top of the canopy. And once I'm done drawing all of these lines, it looks like all of these mittens are hanging, and it's so super cute. For the sentiment, I wasn't quite sure what I was going to do, but then I decided to stamp and emboss my sentiment over some extra cardstock that I had left over from my ink blended panel so that it coordinates with those hanging mittens. The sentiment is from the Warmest Wishes stamp set that I used for the foliage for the canopy at the top of my panel. So I'll stamp and emboss that with white cardstock, and then again, I'll fussy cut because I don't have the coordinating dies to go with this stamp set. But if you want the coordinating dies, I think that's a great idea to have because it also cuts out all of the sentiments. Once again, I'm going to use some 3D foam squares to attach the sentiment, but I wanted to add another element, so I'm using some natural twine, and I'm just going to wrap it around my fingers a few times, twist it to create a bow with some tails going off each end. Then I'll attach it to the back of my sentiment, add a little bit of glue for some reinforcement, and then add it to my card, pressing it down and making sure that it stays in place without too much bulk underneath that bow. Once I adhered this panel to a card base, I decided also that I really wanted the textures on these little mittens to show up a little bit better. So I'm using a Posca paint pen and I'm tracing the embossed areas so that I can really have them show up on this card a little bit better so you can see the texture and all the fun patterns. And that finishes this card for today using products from the December 2024 Warmest Wishes card kit. But let's also take a look at the two other cards that I made, one for the release night and the other for the social media card kit reel that I did for Simon Says Stamp. This kit also uses the adhesive transfer snowflakes on the back, and then using some ink cubes that are a part of this card kit, I stamped some images and introduced some purples as well to make this card a bit more interesting. So that's the card that I did for the social media reel. And then for release night, I did the same thing with the snowflakes in the background, ink blended this one blue, and then used a sweater from that stamp set to create that card. So here we have 3 cards using the December 2024 Warmest Wishes card kit. I hope you enjoyed this inspiration. If you're interested in any of the supplies that I used, be sure to check out the links below and grab this wonderful card kit while it's still available. Thanks so much for watching and have a wonderful day. Bye everyone.
I'm Heidi, Simon's mama and founder at simonsaysstamp.com. Thank you so much for watching our video. If you like what you just saw, be sure to press the thumbs up and subscribe to see more great content.